Knudsen number. So for various ranges of Knudsen number, we have to go for different sciences. So that we have discussed. And so if you go to molecular level, we have to go to statistical thermodynamics. If you go to atomic level and elementary particle level, we have to go to quantum mechanics. In the same way, the velocities are should be finite. It should not be very large approaching velocity of light. So in which case, we have to go for theory of relativity. And another thing is we have to consider inertial frame of reference, which is at rest or in uniform motion in a straight line. Otherwise, Newton's laws will not be valid, and our classical thermodynamics also will not work. And another thing is we discussed about continuum. So Knudsen number is related to continuum. And so if the molecular mean free path is very less compared to the system dimensions, we can assume the system to be continuum. And also we have seen there is a limit of the volume that we consider above certain volume. So the continuity approach works. And below that, which is in the molecular level of dimension, then the continuum assumption breaks. Okay, those things we have discussed. And also we discussed about mass conservation and energy conservation. And they are conserved only when there are no nuclear reactions. Otherwise, mass energy is conserved. But because in our subject, we will not discuss the systems which involve nuclear reactions. So we can comfortably say mass is conserved and energy is conserved independently. And okay, we talked about relativity and time dilation, length contraction, mass increase, such things also. And then because thermodynamics deals with a lot of problems, derivations, and a lot of variables involved in it, properties, thermodynamic properties, equations, and all. So we have to be very careful about the units and dimensions. And any physical quantity can be characterized by dimension, and the magnitude assigned to the dimension are called units. And basically, there are some basic dimensions, or primary dimensions, or fundamental dimensions. And the dimensions which are derived with the primary, fundamental, or basic dimensions are called secondary dimensions or derived dimensions. And we have various system of units, metric assay system and English system we have discussed. And we have seen what are all the fundamental dimensions also. There are totally 9 fundamental dimensions: length, mass, time, temperature, electric current, amount of light, amount of matter, and also plane angle, which is measured in radians, and solid angle, which is measured in steradians. And also we have seen the prefixes, various 10 powers, we can prefix the units. And the definitions also we have discussed about meter, how meter is defined, how second is defined, how kilogram is defined, how Kelvin is defined. And then we have also seen that rules for SI units. So how to represent the units. So if it is newtons or watts, just give capital N or capital W. If you want to write complete Newton, it should be in small letters, the complete thing will be there. And if there are more than 5 or more digits, then I have to give like the digits are to be spaced. And then if it is a 4-digit number, I can write it as a single number without space. But if I am adding or doing some calculation with other digits, then I have to give the space based on the other numbers. And plurals are never used with symbols. Like if it is meters, I have to write M only. And if there are Newton meter, kg, kilojoule, joule per second, like that. So if Newton meter is there, N-M we have to write like that. So everything we have given with examples. And also we have discussed that whenever I have an equation like energy conservation equation, if there are more number of terms, each term should have same units. So that is what is called as dimensional homogeneity. Otherwise, the problem will be wrong. And so these are given dimensions like L, M, length L, mass M, time T, temperature theta, and current A. So when we have derived quantities, so we will see here. So various derived quantities, their dimensions in SI units. If you see area, it is meter square, so that is L square. volume meter cube, that is L cube, velocity meters per second. So meters is length, second per second, so t power minus 1, Lt minus 1 is equal to units are meters s power minus 1. You can write m slash s or ms to the power of minus 1. Whichever way it is okay. Acceleration meters per second squared, so Lt minus 2. And force mass into acceleration, so m also gets added, mlt minus 2. Work or energy, so force into distance, so 1 L will increase from the force, so m L square t minus 2. If you come to the power, this is work per second or energy per second. So t gets decreased by 1. If you see, energy is ml square t minus 2, power will be ml square t minus 3. And the pressure or stress, it is force by area. So force we know mlt minus 2 by area L square, so ml minus 1 t minus 2. And linear momentum, mass into velocity. So mass is m, velocity is Lt minus 1 meters per second. And density, kgs per meter cube, mass per unit volume. So mass is m, unit volume is L cube, so ml minus 3. Strain is dimensionless because it is change in length by original length. Both are length dimensions, L by L cancels. And modulus of elasticity, it is also the units of pressure only, so ml minus 1 t minus 2. So surface tension, force per unit length, force is mlt minus 2, so L gets cancelled, so mt minus 2. Velocity gradient means velocity by length, okay, how much change in velocity by length. So Lt minus 1 by L, you get t minus 1. And in that way, we can have all the other, and specific heat, suppose we come to the theta is there, specific heat, kilojoules per kg Kelvin. It is kilocalories is given. Actually, it is for MKS system. We have to write kilojoules per kg Kelvin. And that is L square t minus 2, theta minus 1. Kilojoules per kg, it is energy per unit mass. And that energy per unit mass is also equal to like V square by 2. V square by 2 is meter square per second square. So that is L square t minus 2. And per Kelvin, so L square t minus 2, theta minus 1. So, and universal gas constant is joules per mole Kelvin or joules per, if it is characteristic gas constant, it is joule per kg Kelvin. Okay, so based on that units, we have to write the dimensions. You have to be just revise once or twice and you see how these are derived. Okay. Any doubts?
Yes, sir.
Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I will proceed further. Okay, then we'll talk about what is called as working substance. Because later you already know how system is defined. It is a quantity of matter on which we focus our attention. That is what is called as system. So it is quantity of matter. Something is there within the system. That is called as working substance. The substance or matter that a system contains is called working substance. So conversion of heat energy to work or work to energy takes place through an agency called the working substance. Okay, so it should be capable of changing its volume. So usually the working substances are, in general, they are fluids. So air, steam, or gas are commonly used working substances, and thus it is important to study the properties of these working substances. So all throughout our subject, we deal with mainly air, steam, or gas. And this also, last class we have discussed about it. What is pure substance? These working substance, we assume it is a pure substance. So we defined also a substance with homogeneous and invariable chemical composition is called a pure substance. It is a homogeneous substance whose molecular structure does not vary. It is uniform, homogeneous, and with time also it will not change. Suppose leave the system aside for some time, its composition will not change. Invariable means with respect to time also it will not vary. So examples, water is a pure substance, steam is a pure substance, even mixture of water and steam also is a pure substance because water is H2O, steam is H2O, mixture of water and steam also H2O. So anywhere you see the chemical composition, it is H2O only. sometimes people get confused. If I take exhaust gases from a IC engine or a gas turbine, are they pure substances? Though there are number of gases, different gases are available. So if I catch the gases, or if I keep a probe and find out the composition at any point of the gas, the composition will be same. So exhaust gases also can be considered as pure substance. So air in liquid form is also pure substance. Air in gaseous form, it is a pure substance because air composition is same, etc. But so is there any non-pure substance? At least one example we have to see. Suppose during liquefaction of air is pure substance, but I am liquefying, which is having majorly oxygen and nitrogen, whose melting point or condensing temperatures are different. So what happens is, as I'm cooling it, so some of the oxygen or nitrogen gets liquefied. So how much it depends. With the time, it changes. Okay, so it is not a pure substance. As its important constituents, nitrogen and oxygen, liquefy at different temperatures, and during liquefaction, concentration of these constituents change. That's why the main example for non-pure substance is the air while liquefying. Okay, so that is an important thing. Many of the things we'll feel that it may not be pure substance, like exhaust gas, a mixture of water and steam, but they are pure substances. That because the composition is same everywhere. And what is the advantage of assuming some substance to be pure? This is what is called a state postulate or two-property rule. The significance of the concept of pure substance is that the condition or state of the pure substance is completely defined by any two independent properties of the substance. Here, two independent properties, that is important. Okay, independent properties. One property can be varied while the other one is held constant. So they are independent. So suppose in general, temperature and specific volume are two independent properties. So if I know temperature and specific volume of any substance, I know I can find out or calculate all the other properties. The complete state of the substance can be identified. So pressure and temperature are independent properties, pressure and temperature also, but when it is single phase. So this is another important thing. While changing of phase taking place, pressure and temperature depend on each other. Okay, for a particular pressure, there is a particular condensing temperature or evaporating temperature. For a particular temperature, there is a particular condensing pressure and or evaporating pressure. So these pressure and temperature depend on each other while changing of phase taking place, or two-phase systems. So that is what is called dependent properties. P is equal to F of T or T equal to F of T in two-phase systems. And P and T are dependent properties in two-phase system. But if it is a single-phase system, P, V, T, R, H, U, that is enthalpy, internal energy, entropy, any of the two properties if I know, I can find out or calculate all the other properties. So that is the important characteristic of pure substance, which satisfies state postulate or two-property rule. Any doubts? Okay, then we go to the familiar definitions like system, surroundings, boundary, closed system, open system, isolated system, all these things. System is a quantity of matter or region of space chosen for study. That is system. And the system is surrounded by surroundings. So it is bounded by surroundings, and the mass or region outside the system is surroundings. Which bounds it is called system boundary, and outside the system boundary it is called as surroundings. So boundary is a real or imaginary. It can be a real surface or it can be imaginary surface that separates the system from its surroundings. Also, the boundary of a system can be fixed or it can be movable. Boundary need not be fixed. It can be a movable boundary. Like suppose if I take a balloon, and so the balloon is a closed system, and if I go on blowing it, or if it just going into the atmosphere, as it is going up into the higher altitudes, the pressure change. So pressure decrease. So actually the size of the balloon will increase because of the decrease in the pressure in the outer atmosphere. It gets blown up a little bit like that. And finally it may burst also. So it is a movable boundary. And even a system, cylinder and piston arrangement also, if I close everything, but I can press the piston up and down, and so it is a movable one. A system may be considered closed, open, or isolated. Closed system is also called as control mass system. A fixed amount of mass and no mass can cross its boundary, but energy can cross. So that is what is called as closed system. Examples like sealed tanks and piston cylinder devices. And the volume need not be fixed. The volume can change. That's why it can be having movable boundary or fixed boundary. But the open system, a properly selected region in space. It usually encloses a device that involves mass flow such as compressor, turbine, nozzle. Okay, these things are open systems. So some mass enters and leaves. Like suppose if I take my room and if my windows and doors, everything are closed, it can be considered as a closed system. Okay, so there is no mass flow, but energy flow is there. Suppose I switch on a light or a fan, right? My fan moves and light glows. That is some electrical energy or electrical power is crossing the boundary. Okay, so there is work transfer is there. Okay, so this is that type of thing is closed system. But if I open my windows and doors, it becomes an open system. Air can move in or move out. Okay, so and it becomes an open system. And examples are given like compressor, turbine, nozzle, boiler, condenser. All these things are open systems. Both mass and energy can cross the boundary of a control volume. And a closed system is bounded by a boundary. This open system is called a control volume, and the boundary is called as control surface. Okay, there is a different terminology: control volume and control surface. Closed system and system boundary. See, the boundaries of a control volume, again, it can be real or imaginary. So we'll see some example like thing. Okay, this is general classification: a thermodynamic system, control mass system, control volume system, and control mass system can be closed system or isolated system, and control volume system is an open system. So here, for isolated system, there is no energy transfer, but for a closed system, you can have heat in and heat out or work in and work out. In the open system, not only heat and work, but also mass also can be in and out. Okay, this is a classification. And so this is a closed system. So here there is no mass crossing the boundary, but energy can cross the boundary. So if I have a piston cylinder arrangement like things, and if I heat it, so the piston moves up, the gas gets expanded. So it is a closed system with a moving boundary. And this is a closed system with a fixed boundary. And similarly, I can have, open system also, you can, this is an open system example. Like I have a nozzle, right? So here mass enters and mass leaves. And here, this is the boundary. If I see here, this is the volume I am considering. And the top one and bottom one, they are fixed boundaries and real boundaries. And this front one and rear one, they are imaginary boundaries. Actually, there is no solid there. It is just moving like this. Okay, so this is nozzle. And again, there is a cylinder piston arrangement if I have some mass going in. So again, I have these walls, which are fixed boundaries. And so because this piston goes off, it is a moving boundary. So like this, we can understand what do you mean by fixed boundary and what is mean by moving boundary. What do you mean by real boundary and what do we mean by imaginary boundary? And isolated system. So we know that there is no mass transfer, so there is no energy transfer. Okay, forget about the figure. The main, the best example for an isolated system is universe. So because nothing can go out of the universe, right? And so there is no mass transfer or energy transfer from this universe to anything else. Unless we think that there are multiple universes with mass flow and energy flow from one universe to another universe. Okay, but in relativity and all, there are some discussions about having multiple universes also. Okay, there is a different science. Okay, so as far as thermodynamics is concerned, thermodynamics has only a single universe. Single universe without any other universes. So everything is within the system. Mass transfer, energy transfer takes place. Nothing crosses the boundary of the universe. There is no possibility. And an ideal thermos flask also can be considered as an isolated system. But the real thermos flask, if you keep some coffee or tea in that, so after one day, it gets cooled. So though I want to have an ideal one, usually real one cannot be ideal one. So a hypothetical ideal thermos flask can be considered as an isolated system. And identify the following systems. Now you come to the picture. Now you tell me which are open systems or closed systems. How do you identify? Thermal power plant. Can somebody try?
Open system, sir.
Thermal power plant, if you take, is it closed system or open system?
Open system, sir.
Open system. Anybody contradicts? So it looks like an open system, okay? But thermal power plant is considered to be closed system. But I have to justify, right? I have to justify because water is going out and forming steam and becoming water and all, and coal is coming in, ash is going out, and air is coming in, exhaust gases going out. So like that, we feel that mass is crossing the boundary. But here, what is the working substance that is important? What is the working substance in a thermal power plant? Water or steam, okay? But not air or coal. They are not working substances. So working substance is water. And this water is pumped in the pump, and then it goes to the boiler, becomes steam, and expanded in the steam turbine, and then condensed in the condenser. And again, it is recirculated. Okay, same mass gets recirculated in every cycle. So there is no mass flow or mass transfer from the system to the surroundings. The whatever water and steam we start with, we end with the same thing. Okay, that's why it is considered as a closed system. Is it okay? Okay, then internal combustion engine. Yes? Any doubt? Okay. Answering. Internal combustion engine is an open system. That's right. Very good. Because air comes in, it changes its composition, and exhaust gases go out. Again, fresh air comes in. It will not be recirculated. Right? So that's why it is an open system. Turbojet. Turbojet open system. Okay, good. And refrigerator? Yeah, very good. So you are answering
Isolated
well. So it's a closed system because again, in the refrigerator, the refrigerant is the working fluid which goes on recirculating inside. Because it doesn't mean that I open the door, some air is going in, air is coming out. I am not concerned with that. Okay, I am concerned with the refrigerant is the working fluid. I am not loading the refrigerant every time. If there is some leak or sometime, then I will load it. Otherwise, usually the same refrigerant gets recirculated. Okay, so that's why refrigerator also is a closed system. Thermal power plant is closed. IC engine and turbojet are open systems. Okay. And then we talk about the properties of the system. And examples for pressure, temperature, volume, mass, internal energy, enthalpy, entropy. These are all different properties. Not all properties are independent. Some are defined in terms of the other ones. For example, density. Density is mass per unit volume. And specific weight is weight per unit volume. Specific gravity is the ratio of density of a substance to the density of some standard substance, maybe water. And if you see specific gravity of water is, specific gravity of water is 1 only. Okay, specific gravity of mercury, yeah, 13.6. 13.6. Very good, Harsha. Okay, very good. So that is specific gravity. Specific volume, it is volume per unit mass. Then the properties are classified as intensive properties and extensive properties. This also you know. And intensive properties are independent of mass, extensive properties are dependent on mass. So distinguish between intensive and extensive properties. If I take a system here, which is having mass, volume, temperature, pressure, density, like this, if I divide this into two parts, okay, so mass is halved and volume became half, and temperature, pressure, density does not change. So both halves, temperature, pressure, density are same, means it is independent of the mass. So it is intensive property, but mass is made half and volume is made into half, so they are extensive properties. So if the value of any extensive property is divided by mass of the system, it is called a specific property. And specific property also actually becomes intensive property. It is equivalent to intensive property, because once you divide by mass, it becomes independent of mass, like specific volume, volume per unit mass, specific total energy, energy per unit mass, specific internal energy per unit mass, right? So normally we write them as small u, small e, small v. And small v, small e, small u, which are specific properties, also can be considered as intensive properties. But capital E, capital V, capital U, these are extensive properties. Okay, examples of different properties and their symbols, they are given: temperature in Kelvin and pressure. So which are intensive and which are extensive, these are also given. Internal energy, joule per kg, volume, meter cube, it is specific volume, meter cube per kg, specific volume, and volume is meter cube. Okay. And the entropy, enthalpy, these things, these are specific properties. And these S and H, these are extensive properties. Small s and h are specific and intensive properties. Okay. And continuum, okay, I don't discuss this. We have discussed in detail in the last class. And state and equilibrium, again, we talked about it. The state of a system is the condition of the system described by the values of its properties. I know the state of the system means I know all its properties. The properties define state. At state, we define properties. And a graph drawn between any two thermodynamic properties is called a thermodynamic chart. Any thermodynamic properties, it is there. It is not thermodynamics. Okay. So PV diagram, PT diagram, TS diagram, like that we say. These are all thermodynamic charts. And any point on the thermodynamic chart represents the state of the system. Suppose I have a PT diagram, right? On that, if you take any point, I know P and T of the system at that state. So if I know two properties, I know all the other properties, means I know the state of the substance. So any point on a thermodynamic chart defines the state of the system. Okay, then we talk about thermodynamic equilibrium. A system is said to be in thermodynamic equilibrium if it maintains thermal, mechanical, phase, and chemical equilibrium. Thermodynamics deals with equilibrium states only. That's what I was talking about. Heat transfer deals with non-equilibrium systems, and thermodynamics deals with equilibrium states. So when do we say a system is in equilibrium? If there are no gradients of any properties, right? So if there is gradient of temperature, it is not equilibrium thermally. If there is pressure gradient, it is not in equilibrium mechanically. If it is different phases, phase equilibrium is not there. If chemical reactions are there, it is not in chemical equilibrium, or even concentration gradients also should not be there. So you can see here, equilibrium is the state of balance. In an equilibrium state, there are no unbalanced potentials or driving forces or gradients of properties within the system. If the temperature is the same throughout the system, it is called thermal equilibrium. If there is no change in pressure, it is mechanical equilibrium. If there is no change in phase, or there are no two phases, a single phase, then it is in phase equilibrium. If the chemical composition of the system does not change with time, that is, no chemical reactions occur, it is in chemical equilibrium. We say the system is in thermodynamic equilibrium only when it satisfies all these equilibriums. Means all properties should be uniform. There should not be gradients of any property within the system. Then we say the system is in thermodynamic equilibrium. So a system at two different states. Here 20 degrees centigrade, 1.5 meter cube. This is 2.5 meter cube. And a closed system reaching thermal equilibrium. Suppose if I take a system with different temperatures at different points. So it is not in equilibrium. After some time, if you see, if all temperatures everywhere, it is 330 degrees centigrade, uniform temperature, we call it as the system is in equilibrium. And a process is a change of a system from one equilibrium position to another equilibrium position. The series of states through which a system passes during the process is called the path of the process. So every point on the path is a state of the substance at some point of the time during the process. That's why it's called path of the process. And so any line on a thermodynamic chart is called a process. But this line can be made dark, continuous, only when the process is quasi-static or quasi-equilibrium process. So when a process proceeds in a very slow manner, that the system remains infinitesimally close to equilibrium state at all times, at every point, at every state of the process, then it is called quasi-static or quasi-equilibrium process. So I should be able to identify, it has to go to through each point on the path. Then only we say it is quasi-static process. Okay, then it will be infinitely small, slow. So usually they are not there, but we assume many processes to be quasi-static or quasi-equilibrium processes. But there are some processes which are not quasi-static. Okay, like if you remember, we talk about free expansion process. We deal it later, and throttling process. These two processes are not quasi-static processes. That's why whenever there is a free expansion process or throttling process, I should not join the state 1 and state 2 with a continuous line. It should be a dashed line, which shows that this is a non-quasi-static process. So you have to remember, free expansion process and throttling process, these two are non-quasi-static processes. Okay, why we assume this quasi-static or quasi-equilibrium is an idealized process, but many actual processes closely approximate it, and they can be modeled as quasi-equilibrium with negligible error. Engineers are interested in these processes because of two reasons. They are easy to analyze, and work-producing devices deliver the most work when they operate on quasi-equilibrium process. And the process is in quasi-static, we get the maximum work. And it is easy to analyze. That is the main important thing, right? And process diagram. So whenever these on a thermodynamic chart, I draw the process like a continuous line. This is called as process diagram. So this is a compression process from state 1 to state 2, right? That is shown there. Okay, in the then we talk about various types of processes, and we have some isoprocesses. I think we can see in the next slide better way. So types of isoprocesses. If the pressure is constant during the process, we call it as isobaric. And if the temperature is constant, I call it as isothermal. If the volume is constant, I call it as isochoric or isometric also. Here, isochoric or isometric, you can see here. And if the entropy is constant during the process, it is isentropic. And if the enthalpy is constant, I call it as isenthalpic. Okay, so throttling is one example for isenthalpic process. And free expansion process is an example for iso internal energy process. Iso internal energy. Internal energy remains constant in free expansion. Enthalpy remains constant in throttling. Okay, so and there are some more processes, like if there is no heat transfer, it is adiabatic process. Like that, we have various types of processes we come across during the subject. Okay, so there are some steady flow processes also. The term steady means no change with time, and if the properties change with time, we call them as unsteady or transient. Okay, so if you see here, I have a system with different temperatures at different points. It is not uniform, but after some time, it is time 1 p.m. At time 3 p.m. also, I have the similar distribution. Then we call it as this is a steady one. Okay, there is no change with time. A large number of engineering devices operate for long periods of time under the same conditions, and they are classified as steady flow devices. And steady flow process during which a fluid flows through a controlled volume steadily. That is same mass enters and same mass leaves all the time, whether I check it now or after 1 hour or after some time. Steady flow conditions can be closely approximated by devices that are intended for continuous operations. Whenever the things continuously operate, like thermal power plant is continuously operating, so actually thermal power plant, though it is a closed system, each component in the thermal power plant is an open system. Pump, turbine, condenser, boiler, all those things are open systems. But because they work continuously, we call them, they are working under steady flow conditions, right? So that is important. All components of refrigeration plant also, they work under steady flow conditions. And for the steady flow, suppose if you take mass, some mass is entering and some mass is leaving. If it is steady flow, same mass will be entering and same mass will be leaving all the time. So the mass of this control volume always remain constant. In the same way, because the energy getting in and getting out remain constant, its total energy of the system also remain constant. So this is called a steady flow system. Then we talk about cycle. A system is said to have undergone a cycle if it returns to its initial state at the end of the process. So it is starting from one, it goes with different processes, and again if it is coming, it may not be only 1 and 2. I can have a number of processes, and finally if it comes to the original state, we call it as it has undergone a cycle. The change in any property y for a cycle is mathematically given by where the symbol y denotes the cyclic integral for the closed path. The cyclic integral of a property is always 0. For any given cycle, suppose I am going from here to here, the pressure change, temperature change, specific volume change, everything, energy changes, everything. Again, when I am coming this way, its energy and internal, there can be different heat transfers or work transfers taking place through the process. But when it is coming back here, its pressure, temperature, specific volume should be same as the beginning one, because this is state defined by the state 1. Okay. So whenever it undergoes a cycle and it is coming back to the same point, means the net effect or net change in property is 0. Okay. It may increase, decrease like that. And again, it comes to the same original value, because its cycle is completed. Again, it starts with same initial values. Again, it continues to another cycle like that. So the cyclic integral of a property is always 0. So this is important. And also because of that, another thing is we call the properties to be point function. So if I put a point on the chart, I define the properties. I know the properties. So it is a point function. And another thing, a property change for a process with a given states and states 1 and 2 is described mathematically like this. 1 to 2, if it is going, dy, that is y2 minus 1. It can be dt is equal to t2 minus t1. Here dp if it is t2 minus t1, like that. So this is what is called as exact differential. And whenever there is a point function is there, right? When it is going from this point to this point, whatever process I go, right? The change in pressure, the change in temperature will be same. The work transfers and heat transfers may be different. So the change in the value of a property that occurs when a system is altered from one equilibrium state to another equilibrium state is always the same, regardless the process used to bring about the change. It is independent of the path. So property is a point function and exact differential. Okay, so this is an important thing. This is what is called as property of property. Okay, then energy viewed as the capacity to do work and the ability to cause changes. It can be stored within the system and can be transferred from one system to another. Okay, so these are two forms of energy. One is stored energy and another is energy in transit or energy in transfer. The stored energy is called as internal energy, and the energy in transit is heat or work, which is crossing the boundary. So within the system, I have the energy of the system, internal energy. So from the molecular point, so how the internal energy comes, it is because of intermolecular potential energy, molecular kinetic energy, intermolecular, that is, there can be intermolecular forces, there can be molecular vibrations. There are so many things. Whatever happens in the molecules, that gives some energy to the system, and that is called as internal energy. It is stored within the system. So energy that is transferred as heat, the change in properties and the total amount of energy of water contains at any instant. How energy is stored in the water doesn't concern. Okay. Okay, then coming to temperature and zeroth law of thermodynamics. Okay, zeroth law of thermodynamics, we know it, if two bodies are in thermal equilibrium with a third body, they are also in thermal equilibrium with each other. By replacing the third body with a thermometer, the zeroth law can be restated as two bodies in thermal equilibrium if both have the same temperature reading, even if they are not in contact. So if you keep your thermometer in your mouth and find out your temperature, and if another person also has the same temperature, then you both have the same temperatures and you are in thermal equilibrium with each other. Okay. Two bodies reaching thermal equilibrium after being brought into contact in an isolated enclosure. Okay. Iron 150 degrees centigrade, copper 20 degrees centigrade. So if they are kept after some time, both will become 60 degrees centigrade. Both will come to thermal equilibrium. And both will have the same temperatures. So based on thermodynamics, zeroth law of thermodynamics, thermometry, the science of thermometry have been developed. Measuring temperatures of different bodies came into picture. So there is what is called as thermometric property. The temperature of a chosen system is determined by bringing a second body or a thermometer into contact with the system and allowing thermal equilibrium to be reached. Okay, if I want to find out my temperature, I keep my thermometer in my mouth and find out what is it. When because we have to wait for 2 minutes or something, so that the thermometer and my tongue comes to the thermal equilibrium. The value of the temperature is found by measuring some temperature dependent property of the thermometer. So there is a thermometric liquid there, mercury, which expands, and that expansion of mercury depends on the temperature. So based on how much it is expanded, I can find out that. So any such property is called thermometric property. Okay, so which is to be repeatable and also predictable. Okay, and the commonly used properties of materials employed in temperature sensing devices include volume of gases, liquids, and vapors. Okay, change of volume with respect to temperature is utilized in measuring the thermometer. So in mercury in glass thermometer, whatever normal thermometer we use. So in some other thermometers also are available, like pressure. That is pressure also dependent on temperature. So the pressure change, temperature change. So pressure of gases at constant volume. So it depends on the Charles law, P by T equal to constant, like that. So example, constant volume thermometer. If I take same constant volume of fluid, and if the temperature changes, its pressure changes. If I can measure the pressure, I can find out the temperature. So this is what is called as constant volume thermometer. Then electrical resistance of solids. So because temperature change, resistance change. If I find out the resistance as a function of temperature, then I can find out what is the temperature. So many semiconductors are used, like platinum, and normal conductors like platinum, and also semiconductors are used as the working fluids. And there are various scales of thermodynamics. We know centigrade scale, Fahrenheit scale, and the Kelvin scale, Rankine scale, like that. The temperature scales are based on some easily reproducible states, such as the freezing and boiling points of water. There are ice point and steam point. So ice point, a mixture of ice and water that is in equilibrium with air saturated with vapor at 1 atmospheric pressure. So that is given as, in centigrade scale, 0 degrees centigrade, in Fahrenheit scale, 32 degrees Fahrenheit. And steam point is given a number 100 degrees centigrade and Fahrenheit 212 degree Fahrenheit. And then once you fix the steam point and ice point, we divide the scale into equal parts. Then I will have Celsius scale or centigrade scale and Fahrenheit scale, which is English unit system. And we have Kelvin scale and Rankine scale. We know that if we add 273 to centigrade scale, and you will get Kelvin scale, and if you add some 460 to Fahrenheit scale, you will get Rankine scale. And how this absolute scale came into picture. Okay, that is how this 273 minus 273.15 is given as 0 Kelvin. Is this a lucky number, or how did they get this particular number? So this is given by this. because we know from Charles' law, P is proportional to T, or P is P by T equal to constant for a constant volume system. So if I take a constant volume gas thermometer, and if I take a particular gas A, and as I change the temperatures, I can find out what are the pressures. I can get a linear line. And I change B, I get another line. I change to C gas, I get another line. And I am measuring the temperature and pressure only in this region, because I don't have the way of decreasing the temperatures very much. Okay, I don't have any equipment for that, suppose. But still, I can find out what are the pressures and temperatures at lower negative temperatures also. By extending all of them, all the lines, if you extend it, they intersect on the temperature ordinate at minus 273.15. Means temperature becomes 0 when pressure becomes 0, whatever the gas you take. So it is found to be minus 273.15 degrees centigrade. And that's why defined as 0 Kelvin. So at any centigrade temperature, if you add 273.15, I get Kelvin scale, which is thermodynamic temperature scale. Any doubts? Okay, I'll continue. So this is Kelvin gives as centigrade plus 273.15. Rankine is Fahrenheit plus 459.67. And 1 degree Rankine is equivalent to 1.8 degree Kelvin. And Fahrenheit is equal to 1.8 degree centigrade plus 32. We know these formulae, how the conversion is taking place. And you can see comparison of different temperature scales. 0.01 degree centigrade is equivalent to 32.02 degree Kelvin, which is the triple point of water. And same way, I can have comparison of magnitude of various temperature units, all the 4 here. And here also, if I have dry ice, solid carbon dioxide, the centigrade is minus 78 and 108 Fahrenheit. Like that, I can see what is the relative values of different scales. Then coming to pressure, we know that force per unit area is the pressure, and the unit is Pascal, which is Newton per meter square, and 1 bar is 10 power 5 pascals, which is 0.1 megapascal or 100 kilopascals. So that's why when you use an equation, I have to know whether I have to substitute the value of pressure in pascals or in megapascals or kilopascals. So that I have to be careful. And 1 atmosphere is 101,325 pascals or 101.325 kilopascals or 1.01325 bars. And yesterday I was talking about kg force, kg mass and all. So if you just, again, you might have referred it, and the kg force is defined in different way and Newton is defined in different way. If 1 kg of mass is accelerated by 1 meter per second square, the force is 1 Newton. But when you define kg force, if 1 kg mass is accelerated by 9.81 meters per second square, then it is equivalent to 1 kg force. That's why 1 kg force is equal to 9.81 newtons. So 1 kg mass is quantitatively equal to 1 kg force. So whether you say kg force or kg mass, the number is same. So that is one of the important point which in the last class you might have got confused. And the normal stress on the feet of a chubby person is much greater on the feet of a slim person, because the force per unit mass, the feet area will be same whether he is fat or lean, but his weight is different. That is force, gravitational force is different. So the pressures also that are acting are from the ground on you is different. So because pressure is force per unit area. And we have different pressures like absolute pressure, gauge pressure, and vacuum pressure. And if I take this as atmospheric pressure, and absolute vacuum, 0 pressure here. So the atmospheric pressure is from here to here. If I keep a barometer, so I measure this particular pressure. And if I have some boiler, and if I keep a gauge over that, so boiler pressure will be higher than that. So we always get in the gauge the differential pressure. How much it is above the absolute pressure, I will get it. So in the gauge, it will read only this gauge pressure. So if I want to know the absolute pressure of the boiler, then I have to add atmospheric pressure to the gauge pressure, then I will get the absolute pressure of the boiler. Similarly, if I have a vacuum chamber, and if I keep a gauge, pressure gauge or vacuum gauge to that to measure it, again it will calculate what is the differential pressure, how much it is less than the atmosphere. So this it will calculate, or this will it measure. And if you want to find out exactly what is the absolute pressure of the vacuum chamber, then I have to subtract this vacuum pressure from the atmospheric pressure, and this gives the absolute pressure of the vacuum chamber. Okay, so this is the way we calculate the absolute pressures from the gauge pressures, because we measure the gauge pressure, but if I want to know what is the absolute pressure of that particular system, then I have to see whether I add or subtract from the atmospheric pressure to get the absolute pressure. Then we know that as we go down in the atmosphere or within the sea level also, if you go down, the pressure changes with the depth. And this rho GH is the pressure variation. So if I want to P at anything, P atmosphere plus rho GH. So as if I go into the depth of this, so as I go down, the gauge pressure increases. Here at the bottom, I will have the maximum pressure because the water weight is acting on that. So the pressure actually increase as I go down. So in the same way here, P pressure below is equal to pressure atmosphere plus rho GH. Rho GH, rho is the density, G is the acceleration due to gravity, and H is the height of the water. And Pascal's law, at the same height, the pressure will be same. So if I take A here, B here, C here, D here, E, F, G, because they are at the same height from the top, right? The pressure at all the points will be same, PA equal to PB equal to PC, like that. So everywhere it is equal to P atmosphere plus rho GH. And so this is what is called as a hydraulic jack. Right? If I want to lift a car, it is very difficult for me. I cannot do this. But if I can use this hydraulic jack here, because here at 1 and 2 are at the same height, P1 equal to P2, and F1 by A1 equal to F2 by A2. So F2 is equal to F2 by F1 is equal to A2 by A1. Here F1 is equal to P1 A1 and F2 is equal to P2 A2. So F is the weight of the F2 is the weight of the car, and if you see F1, because A2 is very large and F2 is very large, and because A1 is small, F1 can be very small. So with little effort, with little force, I can lift the car because of the Pascal's law. So pressure measuring devices are barometer. If I keep a tube here inverted, so because of the atmospheric pressure here, it automatically goes in, right? And this P atmosphere is equal to rho GH. If I know what is the height of the column, and if I know the density of whatever liquid is there, it can be water, it can be mercury or anything. So I can find out the atmospheric pressure, rho GH. And for atmospheric pressure, normal standard atmospheric pressure is 101.325 kilopascals. And it can be of any diameter. It should not be too small where capillary effects will come into picture. Otherwise, I can have any diameter for the tube. And so an important point is at high altitudes, a car engine generates less power and a person gets less oxygen because of the lower density of air. And if you go into the top of atmospheres, if you are on the top of the hill, suppose, so we get less oxygen. Suppose if you want to climb Mount Everest, so you have to carry oxygen cylinders because there the oxygen gets reduced. So at the same time, if a car engine runs at the height, at such a height, the oxygen available will be less, and so it produces less power. So manometer, it is also a pressure measuring device. And so if I want to measure the pressure of this chamber in which there is a gas, So you connect this tube here, and here there is atmospheric pressure, and because of the pressure here, it pushes the water this way. And so the pressure here I want to get, and Pascal's law says P1 equal to P2, and I can find out this pressure height. So P atmosphere plus this rho GH gives me the pressure at 2, which is equal to pressure at 1, which is equal to the pressure in the chamber. So this is the way we can get, if I have different fluids of different heights, so the pressure at this point is P atmosphere plus rho 1 GH1, and here plus rho 2 GH2, and here at 1 plus rho 3 GH3, like that. Similarly, if I want to find out the pressure gradient between these 2 points, okay, I have to say this is P1 plus rho 1g into this height, okay, up to this point is A plus H, PA equal to PB. So if I want to get back minus rho 2 GH, and again minus rho 1 GA gives you P2. So rho 1 is density of this fluid, and rho 2 is density of this fluid. So in this way, if I know pressure at one point, I can find out pressure at other point, or I can find out pressure gradient between 2 points. Okay, other pressure measurement devices, Bourdon tube, pressure transducers, strain gauge pressure transducers, piezoelectric transducers, like that. We need not be much serious about this, but to know there are different pressure transducers are there and how they are worked, you go through this slide. I am not going to discuss much about it. And this is one puzzle I want to ask you, right? It is hydrostatic paradox. It is a paradox which looks right, which looks wrong or right, we don't know, like that. So if you see 3 jars with same base area and same height of some fluid, and so, okay, this is water. Water will exert same pressure from same height irrespective of the shape of the container. That is mass of the liquid. But is it true that water in different shapes of container with up to same height and same base will weigh the same on weighing scale? Okay, suppose here this is atmospheric pressure. I know height, I know rho GH. So the pressure acting on the base I know. And the area of the base and pressure will be same in all the 3 because rho GH is same, atmospheric pressure is same, and base area is same. So the force acting downwards will be same. So theoretically, if I keep them on a balance, all should have the same weight. If I weigh it on a spring balance, all 3 should weigh the same. But it is impractical. You know that waters are different amounts of water. So it should be lighter, it should be medium high weight, and it should have heavy weight. But how can you justify that? Am I clear in my question? All are having same height of water, all are having same base area. So I can find the pressure acting on the base will be same for all of them because atmospheric pressure is same, height of water is same. So pressure acting on the base will be same, and base area is same. So the force acting downwards must be same. So if I find out the area, I should have the same weight for all the 3 jars. But I know from my common sense that it's not true. They are of different weights.
The sidewalls interface with the normal reaction, sir.
Okay, you think about it. Okay, you think about it. It's not just a straight simple thing. You try to come with the answer in the next class. Yeah, pressure is force per unit area, right? And that's why pressure into area is the force, and pressure is same on the base, and the area is same on the base, and so force acting downwards also must be same. And if I keep on the weighing machine, I have to get the same weight theoretically. Okay, but I know that I get different weights with them.
The sidewise pressure there also exist. It will be cancelled out.
Yeah, your good name Aditya. Huh?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good.
Pressure,
Yeah. That's right. So there are sidewalls are there. In the sidewalls, there will be pressure acting in an angle which will have horizontal component and vertical component. Horizontal components gets cancelled, but vertical component, for one it will be downwards, for one it will be upwards, and so there will be less weight or more weight for the other beakers. Okay, nice. It's a nice answer. I'm happy with it. And okay, I think we are coming to the end of the session. Any questions? Any questions? Okay, then we go to our simple stories, right? In 1962, four nervous young musicians played their first record audition for the executives of the Decca Recording Company. The executives were not impressed. While turning down this group of musicians, one executive said, "We don't like their sound. Groups of guitars are on the way out." Like that, they are sent out. And later, the group was called the Beatles. Right? They became so famous. And nowadays, there is nobody who doesn't know about Beatles. There is another example. A school teacher scolded a boy for not paying attention to his mathematics and for not being able to solve simple problems. She told him that he would not become anybody in life. His mother, however, believed in him and coached him in maths. The boy went on to become Albert Einstein. Okay, nice. Thank you very much. And we'll meet in the next class. And go through the first chapter of Cengel and Bowles. You study the first chapter of Cengel and Bowles. Okay, so whatever I have covered, it is from mainly that book, and also in other books also you can refer, but it will be easy for you if you go through that book. Okay, so we'll have next class, I think, on Wednesday, right? So see you again on Wednesday. Bye, all the best. Cengel and Bowles. I have given 4 books to you. So one thermodynamics book by Cengel. మొఖం బ్లో అప్ వచ్చేస్తుంది.